Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of this JavaScript and DOM crash course. Now in this part what I want to do is talk about events. Okay, we're going to look at all the different types of mouse events, keyboard events, and I know this isn't going to be as relative to just the DOM as the last two videos, but it is a very important part of interactive JavaScript. Adding event listeners to elements from the DOM. So that's what we're going to do in this video, and hopefully you enjoy it. So what we're going to do is just go into our DOM.js. This is all our previous code from the last two videos, and I'm going to show you how to add an event listener. All right, now this is the I guess the best practice for adding an event. Now you could do something like this. Actually, we need to create a new button anyways, because I want to look at some click events and I don't want to use this submit button. So I'm going to go right under the UL, and I'm just going to put a line break here, and let's put in a button, and let's give this a class. I'm going to put our bootstrap classes in here just to make it look a little better. So BTN, also a class of BTN. We'll do BTN dark, I guess. And let's see, I'm also going to give it an ID of button, and I'm using Emmet, by the way. That's why I'm able to use this syntax. So we can do this, and then we can type tab, and it'll turn it into an actual tag. All right, so let's just say click here. Actually, I'm going to make this a block button too. So I'm going to add BTN block, and now we have a little button here. So what we could do, what you may have seen in the past, is we can say on click equals, and we can actually run JavaScript in here. We could say alert1 like that, and you'll see it'll actually run. Or you could set it to a function. Let's say we'll just call it button click and save, and then we can go into our JavaScript and we can say function button click, and we'll go ahead and just console.log, and we'll say button clicked and save, and if I click it, you'll see we get it down here. Now this is, I guess, the old way of doing it. It's better to use an event listener because you don't need to have this in your markup. Okay, you want to keep everything, you want to keep it separate. So we're going to just get rid of that, and we're just going to grab onto this using whatever you want. Query selector. I'm actually going to just use get element by ID since we have an ID of button. So what I'll do is I'll say we'll create a variable. I'll call it button, and we'll say document dot get element by ID of button, and we're going to say dot add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click event, and then we want to run a function. Okay, so we can do this, and then we can say console.log 1 2 3, and now if I click it, we get 1 2 3. Now this is one way of doing it, just having a function like this, or you can use a named function. So I can replace this with button click like that. So now if I save, now we get button clicked because it's actually calling this function. All right, so this is the ideal way of doing it. Now, of course, you can use what you've learned in the last two videos and do stuff with the DOM. For instance, let's say we wanted to take the header title, so we'll say document.getElement by ID, and we know we have an ID of header dash title, and we'll say dot text content equals changed. Okay, so now if I click the button, you'll see that the header gets changed. If we want to do, let's say, document dot query selector, and we'll get the ID of main, and we'll set the style dot background or background color, and we'll set that to light gray and save. So now if I click the button, it changes the title and it changes the background color of the main ID. All right, so of course you can integrate, all these DOM selectors and properties that we've learned, and you can attach them to events. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm just going to comment those out, and we're going to pass in an event parameter here. Okay, when you listen for an event and you run a function, you can pass in this parameter. And let's just take a look at this. So if we say console.log e, okay, or you can call it whatever you want. You might see it spelled out as event. Whatever is here, we're just going to log. So let's go ahead and save that and click. And now you'll see we get basically all of these different properties. All right, so we can get all kinds of stuff from here. We can get like the class name of the element. We can get the IDs or attributes. We can get the position of the mouse. Client X, client Y will give us the position of the mouse when we click it. So I just want to kind of take a look at some of the things that we can get from this. So let's go ahead and just comment that out. And let's say, first of all, let's do console.log, and let's log the target. All right, or e.target, sorry. So we'll save, we'll click, and it gives us the actual element that was clicked, okay? Or whatever, or not just clicked. If this was like a key down on an input, a key down event, it would give us the input, okay, instead of the button. So whatever element the event is fired from. So let's say we wanted to get the ID. We could say console.log, and we can say e.target.id, and we'll save. We'll click the button, and you can see the ID is button. If we want to get the class, say console.log, and we'll say e.target, and we can say class name. Whoop. And we'll click, and it's going to give us basically the whole string of all the classes. Now there's also a method called class list, and this isn't just for the event. This isn't just for the event target. You can get the class name. I probably should have did this earlier, but you can get the class name or the class list from any element. So let's say class list and save, click, and it's basically going to give us this this DOM token list, kind of like an array of the classes. All right. So let's see some other stuff we can get. Now we can output this stuff into the DOM if we want. So for example, if we wanted to, let's just put a div here with an ID of output. And we'll go ahead and we'll say, we'll say var output equals document.getElementById output, and we'll say output dot inner HTML equals, and we'll put an h3 in here, and then we'll just concatenate in, let's say, e dot target dot ID. All right, so if I click, and now you'll see the ID will get output to the DOM. So we're just experimenting here. I mean, I don't really know why you would use this, but just to know that you can. All right, so let's look at some other stuff now in the event object. So we have the type. So if we say console.log, and we can get e.type, okay, we're not using the target anymore. We're just doing e.type. If we click, you'll see that it's a click, okay? So it's basically going to tell us whatever type of event that it is. All right, another thing that we can look at is the position of the mouse. So if we say e.client X, this is going to get the position on the X axis when it's clicked. So you'll see 194. If I go over here, 349, 554. So the client X is actually the position from the browser window, so from here over. And if we do client Y, let's try client Y. That's going to be from the window, from the top down. Okay, so you can see that. Actually, let me just comment the X out. So they're all pretty much around the same area because it's coming from the top down. Now that's from the window. If you want to get the mouse position from the actual element that you're inside of, then you want to use offset X and offset Y. So let's say console.log, and we'll say e.offset offset Y. Let's do X and save. And if I go right over here and I click, we get 0. And you'll see it'll increase as I go over. So that's from the actual element itself. And then of course we can do Y. So if we do Y, if I click, so there's -1, 1, 4, 12. So as I go down, it's going to increase. Okay, so just remember that client is from the browser or the window, and offsets from the actual element itself. All right, another thing we can do is we can test to see if when you click it, if you're holding down the Alt key or the Shift key or the Control key. So if we say console.log, let's say e.alt key and save. If I click it, we get false. Now what I'm going to do is hold down my Alt key and click, and we get true. So you can do things based on if you're holding these keys down or not. So let me just copy this, and then I'm going to change this one to CTRL key, Control key, and this one is Shift key. So I'm just going to click it. Everything's false. I'm going to hold down Shift and click. You can see that the last one's true. If I hold down Control and click, that one's true. I hold down Alt and click, that one's true. Okay, so you can do an if statement to see if Shift was held down. If it was, then you can have different functionality in your script. All right, so that's something that may be useful to you. All right, so that's pretty much all I want to look at as far as the event object. Let me put a comment up here just to separate. So this is where we started events. All right. I know this is messy, this script, guys, but it's just kind of a reference for you guys to use when you're actually building something. Let's see, what do we want to do next? So next, let's just take a look at some of the different mouse events. All right, because we have different events based on different actions. So we want to look at some of the mouse actions. We already looked at click, but what I'm going to do is actually comment out this whole button click function. I guess, yeah, we'll get rid of this too, comment that out. Notice I'm not deleting anything because I want you guys to have this. But I'm going to create a new function here called run event. And we're going to pass in our event object here. And we're going to just console.log. And we're going to say, oops, we're going to say event type. And then we're just going to concatenate e.type. Remember that? We could get the type of event by using that .type. And then what we'll do is let's see, we're going to create a variable for our button. Actually, I'll just copy what we did up here. Except instead of running button click, I'm going to say run event. All right, so we'll save, and we get event type click. All right, so let's look at some of the other types. So if we go ahead and actually, you know what I'm going to do is let's move this down here and say button. All right, so this is going to do the same thing. It's just not connected. Like that. All right, now let's look at some other types of events. So we also have double click. So what I'll do is go in here and I'll say DBL click, and I'm just going to comment out this. Let's save. Now if I click, nothing happens. If I go ahead and double click, we get our run event, and it's going to tell us the type, which is a double click. Okay, we also have the mouse down event. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to mouse down, and I'm going to click down, and as soon as I click down, it runs. Okay, it doesn't wait for me to lift up or anything. As soon as that mouse goes down, that event fires off. We also have mouse up, okay, in addition to mouse down. So let's say mouse up. Let's save. I'm going to click and hold. Nothing happens. When I release, then the event fires off. Okay, so there's a difference between mouse down and mouse up. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, let's see, I want to test some other types of events, but not with a button. So what I'm going to do is go and I'm going to create under the button. I'm going to put in a div, and I'm going to just, I'm going to give it a inline style. I'm going to give it a width of, let's say, 1 second. Let me just check my thing here. So we're going to give it a width of 400 pixels and a height of 200 pixels and a background of light gray. All right, we'll save that, and you can see we have a little box here. Let's put a line break. We'll move it down a little bit. All right. So we have this gray box, and I'm also going to give it an ID of box so that we can grab onto it. So we'll go back to our JavaScript, and let's create another variable. I'm going to copy that. We're going to call this one box. We're going to get by ID box, and then I want to look at some more events. So let's take a look at the mouse enter event. So we'll say box dot addEventListener, and we're going to listen for the mouse enter event, and then we're going to run event. So let's save. Whoops, that should be uppercase. All right, so as soon as I enter the box, you'll see it fires off. All right, if I go out and I keep going in, it'll keep firing that event off. So we have mouse enter. We also have mouse leave. So if I go ahead and I paste that in, let's change this to mouse leave. So we enter, and then we leave, and then that gets fired off. So enter, leave, enter, leave. Now, in addition to mouse enter and mouse leave, we also have mouse over and mouse out. So let's say mouse over and mouse out. All right, so we'll save that, and then you'll see that when I enter, both of those mouse over and mouse enter fire. When I leave, both mouse out and mouse leave fire off. So what the hell's the difference? They're doing the same thing. Well, the difference is if this element has something in it, like let's put in, we'll put in an H3, and we'll just say hello. All right. So if we enter, okay, both are going to fire off, mouse over and mouse enter. Now, if I go and I go hover over that hello, that child element, you'll see that. Hold on a second. This is getting too confusing. Let me just let me comment out mouse leave and mouse out. So we're only dealing with the enters. So we go in the box, both fire off. If I go over the hello, only the mouse over fires off. Okay? The mouse enter is only going to be for the element itself, but the over will be for any inner elements. Okay? Does that make sense? You'll see that it keeps firing off as I go over this. But the mouse enter will only be going in the actual the parent element. All right? And it's the same thing with mouse leave and mouse out. So if I go ahead and comment those out, and we'll do the same thing. If we leave, we'll get both. But if we go on this one and leave, we just get mouse out, not mouse leave. All right, I hope that makes sense. So those are some of the other mouse events. Now we also have mouse move. So what I'll do is, let's just copy this, and let's change this to mouse move. And then that's going to fire off whenever I'm just in there and I'm moving the mouse. Now what's cool about this is we can actually grab the position of the mouse and we can do different things with it. So let's go to our run event, and let's take our output. Remember, we have that variable output which is connected to this div right here. So what I want to do is I want to output the mouse position into our application or into our browser here. So we'll say output equals, and let's say we'll just put an H3, we'll say mouse X, and we'll just concatenate onto that e.offset X. Okay, and then we'll go, let's see, we'll end our H3, and then we'll put another H3, and we'll say mouse Y, concatenate e.offset Y, and then we'll end our H3 like that. Let's save. Let's see, why is that not? Oh, we got to do output.inner HTML. And now you'll see that it's tracking the mouse position inside, okay, as I move it. Now we can take this a step further and do something cooler. Let's comment this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say document. Actually, no, let's take the box. Okay, so we have our box variable, which is set to the document.getElementById box. So this whole box here, and we're going to say dot style dot background color, and we're going to actually set this to RGB. Okay, so you can set colors to RGB values, which is red, green, blue. So it would be like the red color, the green, the blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the red and green, and we're going to connect it to the offset numbers. All right, so in here we're going to just concatenate like this, and we're going to say e dot offset. Let's do offset X here. Okay, and then we're going to put, for the green, we'll concatenate e dot offset Y, and then for the last value, for the blue, we'll just put 40. All right, so let's go ahead and save this, and let's go in the box and move around, and you'll see that the color is actually changing because it's changing the value of this RGB. It's changing the first two parameters based on this, wherever the mouse is. All right, now we could actually take this a step further, and instead of doing just the box, we could say document.body. Remember, we can access the body of the document, and we'll change the style of that. And now the entire body will change the background color as we move. All right, so I think that's pretty cool. Is it practical and useful? Maybe not, but that's not what this series is about. This is just about learning. All right, so that's it for that. Now what we're going to do is look at keyboard and input events. Okay, so we have our form here we haven't even used yet, so we're going to work with this. Now I still want to use this run event right here. I'm just going to comment that part out. Let's comment this out. All right, so we're going to need to grab onto the input. So I'm going to create a new variable here called item input, and we're going to set it to document.querySelector, and we can use any selector we want in here. So I'm going to say input, and I want to grab the input that has the type of text. All right, let's also create a variable for the form itself. We're going to need that at some point, so we'll say querySelector, and we're just going to grab, let's say form. All right, we only have one form, so that's fine. So let's see, let's go down here and let's take our item input, and let's add an event listener, and we want to listen for a key down event. Okay, so we'll say key down, and then we're going to run event. Let's go ahead and save, and I'm going to go and I'm going to just click a key, and you see that it fires right off. Each time I type that key, that event is going to fire off. Now, if you want to, and you probably would want to, catch what you're typing in here, then we could go down to our run event, and let's say console.log, and we can say console log e.target.value. So let's go ahead and save that, and then as I type, you'll see that it'll actually log what I'm typing. So we could take this and we could output it somewhere. So let's say we wanted to put it, all right, so we have this output div right here. So what we could do is we could say document.getElementById output dot, we'll say inner text equals, actually we'll do inner HTML equals an h3, and then in here we'll just go ahead and we'll put in e.target.value. Save, and let's start typing, and you'll see that it'll actually output down here. All right, so let's go ahead and just comment those out. And hopefully, you know, doing this, I mean, this is just a mess of code, but hopefully this gives you guys some ideas of maybe some stuff you could build. All right, so let's look at some other inputs. We have key down. So as you would probably guess, we also have key up. So key up is going to run when you release the key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down and hold a key. We get key down. If I let go, there's key up. Okay. So that's key down, key up. We also have key press. So if we say key press, let's comment these two out. And if I just press any key, it's going to go ahead and fire off. All right, so those are the key events. Now we also have other events that are attached to input, like text inputs like this. So we have focus and blur. So what I'm going to do is take the item input, and let's change key press to, let's say, blur. Actually, let's do focus first, and we'll save. Focus is when you just click inside of an input like that. Okay, you can see how it's alive. It's active. It's focused. Okay, so that's going to run then. Now we also have blur. So if we say blur, we click in, we get focus. We click out, we get blur. Okay, so in, focus, out, blur. Now, two other pretty cool events we have are cut and paste. So if we go ahead and change this to cut and change this to paste, and let's go ahead and type something in here. Actually, let's comment these two out. We go ahead and type something in, let's highlight it, and let's cut it, and it'll actually fire that event off. Okay, if you wanted to, for some reason, I don't know, take the, let's see, what could we do here? Document.body.style. Actually, let's do style.display and set it equal to none. If we go ahead and cut. So let's type something in, and then we'll do cut, and everything freaking disappears. So just some weird stuff like that you can do. I'm not going to leave that. That's just a stupid example. All right, and then we have paste. So if I go ahead and I paste something in, that's going to run, and it's going to be the paste type. All right. Now another one we have is input. So input will actually run when you do anything with an input. So let's change this to input. All right, so we'll save that, and then I'm going to just start typing. We get input. If I go ahead and cut, we get input. If I paste, we get input. So anything you do with this input, if you are listening for that event, it's gonna fire off. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add in a select list, or a select box right here. So let's go in our index.html, and we're going to go, let's go right after the text input, and we're going to put in a select. And we actually don't need a name and an ID. I just want to select with a couple options. let's say option, we'll do 3 of them. And we'll just say 1, 2, 3. This doesn't really matter. And let's actually add a class to make it look good, a bootstrap class of form control. And save. Let's also add a margin right to class just to push that button over a little. And there we go. So now we have a select item or select list. So if you want something to fire off when you choose here, you can use the change event. So what we'll do is create a variable for this element. So let's say var select. We'll set this to document dot query selector, and let's say we just want to choose the select element. There's only one. And then down here we'll say select dot addEventListener, and let's listen for a change event. Okay, so change, and then we'll run event. Save. Let's go over here, let's choose something, and you'll see that that will fire that change event off. If we want to get the value, we can do the same thing we did with the text. We can console log e.target.value. So if we save, you'll see we get 2, 3, 1. So that'll give us the value. And I believe if we do this, the input, that should work as well. If we listen for input, let's see. Yep, so that will run input and change. When we select, those will both run. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is a submit event, which is going to be on the form. Okay, we set a form value here. So we're going to go form.addEventListener, and we want to listen for a submit run event. All right, now if I go ahead and I just type something in, we don't even have to type anything in, but let's just click the submit button, and notice that nothing's happening. Actually, you can see a blink down there. You see, if I keep clicking, it'll blink real quick. That's because it's actually submitting to the page, okay? It's just working like a regular HTML form. In order for it not to do that, you have to prevent that from happening. And the way that you do that is you take this event parameter that's passed in and you call e.preventDefault, okay, which is a function that's going to stop that from happening. So now if we go ahead and save and now we submit, you'll see that it actually works. Okay, it's not submitting to an external file or whatever it does by default. All right, guys. So I think that's going to be it for now. Like I said, I think we'll have one more video, and in that video we'll actually make this into an application where we can add items. We'll be able to type something in, add it to the DOM, have it show up here, and then maybe add a delete button over here that we can click and we can get rid of the elements here. Obviously, they're not going to be persisted to a database or anything like that. It's all just in the UI. It's all in the DOM. All right, but I think that'll give you a little bit more experience on actually building something real instead of just, you know, the sandbox that we've been working in. So hopefully you guys like this. If you did, hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're not, and thanks for watching.